Tonight, a budget battle. City councilors and Liberal MPs at odds over who should foot the bill. Good evening. We begin with the double-digit property tax hike proposed by City Hall.
It's a number councillors say could rise if the feds don't pay more, and debate that's heating up with Toronto homeowners caught in the middle. CTV's Mike Walker joins us live with the details. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, if the city does not secure funding from the federal government to cover housing for refugees, taxpayers could be hit with what's being called a federal impacts levy, which could bring the property tax increase to as high as 16.5%, an increase being slammed by some Liberal MPs.
First of all, a lot of you already knew that this was going to be the case. Here's the reality about this. This is massive. Did you bring in those refugees? Did you get a vote in that? Why are homeowners getting laced with this bill? Especially when they're talking about cutting the funding for snow clearing, which actually goes towards the homeowners. So are we talking about something for all residents of Toronto should be paying for this? Or are we talking about just the homeowners should be paying for this? And if so, why should the homeowners be paying for this? Maybe this should be all of Ontario's responsibility. Maybe this should be the federal government's responsibility since they brought those people in. Where is some common sense in this? Maybe we should be cutting some of the elected officials' incomes, their salaries. Maybe we should be looking at that. Maybe we should be looking at their footprint. Maybe we should be moving their office buildings out of the city and because they cost too much and sell that and pay for it. Guys, I don't know. I really go off on this one. I think it's really ridiculous. And if you live in Toronto, I'm sorry that you're having to face this. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an exodus as a result, because I know they want to make it sound like, oh, it's only the small amount. It has never been a small amount, and it always goes up from whatever they predict it to be. Just as Justin Trudeau said, oh, we're going to run a couple of small, deficits. And they ended up being massive stimulus bills for all 8 years of his current reign. So guys, don't sleep on this one. And if you do live there and you're about to get hit with this, sorry that you're having to deal with this stuff. But if you can, maybe you want to write to your current officials.
I know on the big financial days like budget day and the fall economic statement day, governments like to present a real air of confidence. But I look through the projections, I look through the caveats in this document, I see a lot of anxiety about a lot of uncertainty. But if you look at the projections in your budget on the base scenario, which in itself is a bit pessimistic, averaging about 1% growth this year, when most of that growth has probably already happened in the first part of the year, and barely above 0.4 next year, with unemployment going up to about 6.5%. You sandwich all of that with all the mortgage renewals that are coming up, and the potential for a real shock to the economy there as increased mortgage payments take money out, there are fewer people working, that takes money out. This looks to me as an enormous short to medium term challenge for the economy in the country.
So the base scenario, as you know very well, is not my forecast or the Department of Finance's, yes. Private sector economists, which, by the way, is like such a great thing about Canada, that you can't cook the books. It's based on what the private sector judges. And I actually read that as really optimistic, because what the private sector economists are saying is we will avoid the post-COVID recession that was pretty much universally forecast. What they're saying is we're going to do something that a lot of people thought was impossible, which is have a soft landing after this time of extraordinary economic volatility.
Guys, I don't know that I've met that I've ever seen a politician that is better at spinning pure garbage than this person. I'm sorry. Okay, let's just talk about a couple of things there. Soft landing. Tell that to the people that are getting kicked out of their houses right now because they can't afford them. Tell that to the people that are living on the streets as they're watching the federal government pay for accommodations for the refugees that they brought in. Listen, I've got nothing wrong with refugees and us being a compassionate nation. Absolutely for it. But when you're treating refugees better than you're treating your own citizens, the people that are actually paying for someone else to live in a hotel while they live on the street, that's actually what's happening right now. Soft landing? What garbage. And you know why I have hope for Canada's long-term future? It has nothing to do with their economic plan. It's because Canada has a strong natural resources base, first and foremost, and we have strong Canadians that are willing to fight for that, to really be able to develop our country. We want to do that. Now, let's just address that little piece there about foreign investment. Really, foreign investment. That's why you put a ban on foreign investment into real estate. I'm not saying that was a wrong measure, but what other type of foreign investment are we talking about? Are we talking about your connections to China and foreign interference with your own MPs? With your own Liberal MPs? Is that what we're talking about? All right, what is that chart showing us? We're looking at now there are more places to be rented than there are to buy. Not really all that surprising in that the prices of homes are huge. So we're seeing two things when we look at this chart. First of all, you can see that the blue line shows us that that rents are continuing to go up. More places available for rent. Why is that? Because people can't sell their places. And why can't people sell their places? A, because the cost of those, and B, because of the current mortgage rates. People can't afford to buy them. And so if people can't offload them, they're renting them. What would you do? It's what I would do. I'd rent it out if I couldn't afford to keep paying that. And we're seeing more and more people trying to, including, I was just speaking to a couple last week who were going to move further out of the city, rent their house in the city so that they could afford to pay their mortgage rates. So this may be the first time that we're seeing this in a long time, but it's quite normal given our current set of circumstances. Okay, so now, does this really pose any concern for you and I when we look at this? A lot of cities around the world have this in common, where there are more places to rent than there are to buy, and that's because of high prices. Go to Germany and go to Berlin, go to New York, Toronto is already like that. The cost of buying places is really high. So does that even out at some point? I doubt it. I think that's a normal trend for us to see, where the cost of housing in a major city like, say, Toronto, as we're looking at here, especially in downtown Toronto, where we see that prices are going to be high for longer. Most people can't afford those types of homes, nor do they probably want some of those homes, because you may want the lawn and the backyard to be able to be with your family. Again, what does this mean long term? I don't think this has any consequence for you and I. It's just part of the trend that we're dealing with. What we do need to see as Canadians is our incomes going up relative to the price of real estate. That will bring affordability back in line. Okay, look, so when you look at this, one of the things that as Canadians we can consider is that if you're renting for a long period of time, you're not building up equity. A lot of Canadians have been able to use their home as a retirement fund, as an investment plan. You can build up this equity in there and you can see appreciation for your home. So what does that mean for you and I if we don't own a home? It means that you're not getting that advantage if you see it as such. It does not mean that you can't still go out and profit. and buy a home. You may just have to go further out of the city to another city. You may have to consider alternate locations if you want to use real estate as an investment vehicle. If you can't get into it now, you may want to consider other things like private lending, using your money in that way, investing in other types of assets, maybe getting into investment properties in other areas, even if you can't afford to live in Toronto, doesn't mean that you can't go out and invest in real estate in other parts of the country.